Well, it most definitely is your top story on this Tuesday morning. South Africa reaching yet another grim Covid-19 milestone. The death toll since the virus was first detected in the country in March of last year has now surpassed the 60,000 mark. Here's a breakdown of those Covid-19 numbers in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, so we usually do this with an assistance of a graphic. That's now up. Let's get you a snapshot of what things are looking like. So in the last 24 hours, 12,000 odd new infections picked up. It's pushed the active caseload in this country to 157,199 since the pandemic began. 1.9 million cases of Covid-19 being picked up. The provincial breakdown is just on the side of that. Gauteng still accounting for the lion's share, if you like, of these new infections. 8,000 is followed by the Western Cape with just about 900 infections.
Yeah, I mean, look at the difference there between the numbers we're seeing in Gauteng and the closest second we have is the Western Cape with 902. That's almost 10 times a difference between the two provinces.
Yeah.
All right, let's take you to the number of tests conducted. There's the graphic up there for you now. The total number of tests conducted and this is in both the public and the private sector there, 13,011. So even though fewer people, in terms of the numbers we're seeing in terms of daily increases have tested positive, the actual positivity rate is much, much higher.
Spot on. Yesterday's test positivity rate at 26.9%. Today, it's at 28.3%.
Sure.
And you might remember, the test positivity rate tells us of the tests conducted, how many people have contracted the virus. In layman's terms, it's essentially telling us how fast the virus is spreading. Those nominal numbers don't tell the full picture. This test positivity rate is certainly an important one to look at. Let's delve into the provinces once again, get you a better sense of how things are looking like there. You might remember how things still at the heart of this third wave of this Covid-19 pandemic. 8,408 new infections in the last 24 hours. It's followed once again by the Western Cape with 900. Huge differential there. In fact, Gauteng is still by far the only province with a 4-digit lead in terms of the number of infections. The Western Cape follows after that with less than 1,000. And then I think it's quite safe to say that all the other provinces are lagging quite behind. You're watching the 7-day moving average of those new cases. Once again, that red line that you see on your screen being Gauteng, shooting up at an alarming rate. In just a moment, we'll speak about an article in the Business Day that tries to give us reasons behind this, why it appears that Gauteng is experiencing the type of surge that it is at the moment.
All right, let's take a look at some of the numbers we're seeing in terms of hospital admissions. If we can bring up that graph, please. And there it is now. These are private sector and public sector hospital admissions. The total number of people that are in hospital at the moment, 11,801. In the private sector, accounting for the bulk of that number, almost 7,700, and in the public sector, 4,112 people admitted in public sector hospitals. Admissions to date, complete number of admissions since the start of the pandemic, 143,636 in the private sector, 158, almost 159,000 in the public sector.
Really alarming that. And what's the story behind hospital admissions? It's this Delta variant. Remember, if the virus is spreading at a very fast rate, we run the risk of overwhelming the health system and seeing the type of numbers that we're seeing right now. So it's always important to keep that in mind as we place the different information in perspective. Delta is not necessarily a challenge because of things like severe disease. It's a challenge because it spreads so easily and so quickly, which means you have a lot of people flocking to hospitals, and that runs the potential of breaking our system.
Another devastating story in the news cycle this morning is around the AstraZeneca vaccine. Remember those 1.5 million vaccines? The decision taken back then was that it would be sold to African countries. Well, researchers now telling us that that particular vaccine is incredibly effective against the Delta variant.
Wow. Yeah, who would have known that this is how things would have turned out. Let's get you a sense of what else you need to know now. I think we're going to move on to the vaccinations in our country and get you a picture of what that's looking like insofar as the numbers are concerned. So what is on your left is the total number of vaccines administered by province. On the right, total number administered by province and sector in the last 24 hours. The part in the yellow on your right-hand side is the vaccines administered in the private sector. The grey is those in the public sector, and you can see it's pretty clear that the public sector is certainly leading insofar as those are concerned. In Gauteng specifically, a total of 21,000 vaccines have been administered in some instance in the last 24 hours. It's followed by the Eastern Cape. That might take some people by surprise, with about 20,000 vaccines administered.
Yeah, absolutely. KwaZulu-Natal is close behind, almost 17,000 vaccines administered in that province, and then Limpopo, 12,167. The Free State, the Western Cape is next, pardon me. There we go. The Western Cape next, and then I think it is the Northwest, and then the other provinces are quite close behind in terms of just around 4,000 odd vaccines administered in the last 24 hours. Total vaccines in the last day. It's not a bad score. It's still somewhere off the 300,000 we were hoping to do daily. 97,202.
I'll even add to that, we've done better than this. In fact, there have been days where we've breached the 100,000 mark insofar as the number of vaccines administered in one day. Again, the president aiming for 300,000. My take is that this is a far cry from that.
Absolutely. So that's really just an update on your COVID-19 news on this Tuesday morning. Let's bring you some other news in your headlines.